June 6th, 1944. It's an important date in American and world history. That's when the Allies stormed the beaches at Normandy, France, penetrating Adolf Hitler's formidable Atlantic Wall.
Nearly 1,000 Americans were killed in the assault, but not all of their remains were identified until now. As First Alert 6's producer Roger Hamer shows us, some are finally coming home 82 years later.
Thousands of American soldiers in landing craft approached the French coast on D-Day. They disembarked from large infantry landing craft. One carrying soldiers, many from the Midwest, never touches French soil.
It hit a mine, rolled into another, and was hit by an artillery shell.
Some of those killed were never identified.
They searched it. They found remains in that ship. There were 25 service members that were missing from that incident. Small pieces of bone were recovered and tissue.
Their remains were buried on a cliff overlooking Omaha Beach. 5 years ago, those remains were sent to the Defense POW MIA Accounting Agency, or DPAA, at Offutt Air Force Base for positive identification. Dr. Franklin Damon is the lab director here.
There are only about 188 bones that we have from that incident to work with to do our scientific effort to make identifications.
Supervisory anthropologist Dr. Carrie Brown says it's like putting a puzzle together.
When the remains arrive, they are assigned to an anthropologist to do the initial examination of the remains. And so that person will look over, determine what elements are present, take an inventory, and then we'll meet to discuss what we need to nominate for DNA based on what we have present and then what I know about the case history. All of the cases are challenging. This one is definitely challenging because we're looking for many individuals across 4 disinterments using different lines of evidence.
One was identified by a fingerprint in 1944. DNA testing discovered a set of brothers. Today, 50 family members of 16 others came to witness the identification of their lost service members.
My uncle was killed on Omaha Beach.
Christine Fisher from Iowa was here.
I definitely wanted to be here because I felt so bad for my grandmother, and I thought that this would just be a way to kind of compensate for that.
It was, quite a nice surprise when we found out recently.
Tom Plott came from New Jersey after his great-granduncle was identified.
I'm really blown away by everything that I'm seeing here. I have a background, I'm a pharmacist, so I have, a good background in science and life science, and I'm just amazed by what I've seen here.
More than 8 decades later, these brothers in arms will finally have a permanent resting place.
These men who were together at Omaha Beach, buried there in Normandy, are being buried and remain together here.
At Offutt Air Force Base, Roger Hamer, First Alert 6.
The remains of the soldiers will be buried at Omaha National Cemetery tomorrow. It's a reminder of the nation's promise to never leave a fallen warrior behind.